We begin this morning, though, with breaking news on the war in Ukraine.
At least 14 people have been killed in a new wave of Russian airstrikes in the first large-scale attack in nearly 2 months. The pre-dawn strikes targeted 3 major cities, including the capital, Kyiv, and the hardest hit was the central city of Uman. Officials say at least 12 people were killed after missiles struck an apartment building. NBC News foreign correspondent Raf Sanchez joins us now for more on this. So, Raf, let's start with the situation in Uman. What happened there and what do rescue operations look like right now?
Well, Lindsay, it is a devastating scene in Uman right now. Ukrainian authorities say a Russian missile hit the upper floors of one of those apartment buildings at around 4:30 a.m. So families were sleeping. Nobody had time to run. Nobody had time to hide. There are at least 2 children among those killed there, but that death toll is likely to rise in the coming hours. As we speak, rescuers are on the scene. They are searching through the rubble, trying desperately to find survivors, but carrying out also the grim task of recovering bodies. And there was a major fire caused by this missile. So fire crews first having to put out the blaze and then sifting through this burning rubble. Now, Uman is a small city. It's about 3 hours south of Kyiv. It is nowhere near the front lines. And up until this point in the war, it has largely been spared the violence. That all changed this morning. Lindsay?
Raf, we also know these missiles targeted Kyiv, they targeted Dnipro. What happened in those places?
Yeah, so Dnipro, unlike Uman, has been just absolutely hammered all the way throughout the war. When I was in Ukraine in January, a missile strike killed more than 40 people at a single apartment building. In terms of today's strike, the death toll is, quote unquote, only at 2. A child and a woman killed in a house in the city. We don't yet know if there's a relationship between the 2 of them, if this was a mother and child. In Kyiv, that is where Ukraine's best air defenses are concentrated. And it does appear that the Ukrainians stopped any of these missiles coming through. They say that across the country, they shot down 21 out of 23 incoming Russian missiles, guys.
Raf, this obviously comes as Ukraine prepares to launch its highly anticipated counteroffensive to actually retake Russian-held territory. Where do things stand right now with those plans?
Yeah, Lindsay, so we've been hearing from Ukraine's defense minister this morning, and he is indicating that this new counteroffensive could basically begin at any time. He said, as soon as there is God's will, the weather, and a decision by commanders, we will do it. And we know that in recent months, Ukraine has been both training its forces for this operation, but also marshaling all that new equipment it's got from NATO, all those tanks, those armored vehicles, those longer range missiles. We don't know exactly where the Ukrainian military plans to strike. There was some indication of their plans in those leaked Pentagon papers, but the Ukrainians have consistently shown an ability to surprise both us and the Russians in terms of where they show up. Lindsay?
All right, Raf, thank you for that reporting.
There are also new developments this morning in the investigation into attempts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Yesterday, former Vice President Mike Pence testified before a grand jury investigating former President Donald Trump's alleged role in trying to overturn the 2020 election. Pence was surrounded by heavy security as he arrived at a federal courthouse in Washington. His testimony came just 1 day after a federal appeals court rejected Trump's bid to block Pence from testifying. For more, we're joined by NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Dateline in Washington. Ken, good morning. So this is a big development. Pence's testimony could be pretty critical to special counsel Jack Smith's case. What exactly do we know about the former vice president's testimony? What is the special counsel looking into exactly?
Good morning, Zinkley. Well, we know that Pence testified for about 5 hours behind closed doors. This is a secret process. But of course, Mike Pence was the central focus of efforts by Donald Trump and his allies to stop the congressional certification of the electoral votes on January 6th. He was under intense pressure. We know a lot about it from the testimony of others, but there are things that Mike Pence can tell that grand jury that nobody else can, including the contents of his conversations with Donald Trump before and after the event. There's one conversation where Trump allegedly called him a wimp. Because let's not forget that Mike Pence, at the end of the day, decided there was nothing he could do on January 6th. He did what he thought was his constitutional duty. Then the riot began, and rioters began assaulting and breaching the Capitol. And during that time, Donald Trump tweeted that Pence didn't do what Trump wanted him to do, and then you started hearing chants from the rioters of hang Mike Pence. So dramatic developments that really only Pence can tell in the most dramatic way possible. He had to go into hiding, remember. He was concerned about where the Secret Service was going to take him. So he is a crucial witness that can really fill in some blanks for this grand jury investigating the circumstances of January 6th.
Yeah, and Ken, I mean, we know Trump spoke yesterday while campaigning in New Hampshire. I want to first play what he had to say, and we'll talk on the other side.
Mr. President, what do you think of Mike Pence testifying today?
Oh, I don't know what he said, but I have a lot of confidence in him.
It sounds like Trump is confident in Pence, and yet he also tried to block him from testifying. Did we expect Pence's testimony to happen so quickly after that ruling?
We were certainly on the lookout for it. There is one school of thought that they rushed him in there to forestall any possible appeal by Trump to the Supreme Court. But look, the legal experts say Trump was almost certainly going to lose this. There was no executive privilege claim that could protect Pence from testifying in a criminal investigation, and nobody thinks that Trump really is confident in Pence. I mean, Mike Pence has given interviews after January 6th where he said he was disappointed that Trump let him down, that they continue to disagree about what the right thing to do was at that time. And Pence has said that while he thinks there may have been irregularities in the 2020 election, that Joe Biden won, and he knew that, and that's why he acted the way he did that day.
And Ken, I know it can seem like we're throwing this word around a lot, but a former vice president testifying in an investigation into his former boss is unprecedented, and it comes at a time where many expect Pence and Trump to actually face off in the Republican primaries 2024. And before that, what is Pence's team saying?
Well, look, they've always said that Pence was going to tell the truth about what happened and let the chips fall where they may. He has sort of walked this careful line. Remember, he refused to testify before the January 6th committee. He only testified here after he was compelled to by a judge. So he's sort of trying to have it both ways a little bit, not completely breaking with Trump, because he knows that millions of people still believe that what Trump said about the 2020 election is correct, and millions of those people are going to be voting in Republican primaries. But nonetheless, he could be a very powerful witness in only one of several investigations that could imperil Donald Trump, even as he's running for president, Sinclair.
Yeah, really consequential developments there. Ken Delaney, thank you so much.
We turn now to breaking news in Alaska, where officials at the U.S. Army base at Fort Wainwright in Fairbanks have confirmed the crash of 2 Apache helicopters last night, killing 3 soldiers and injuring 1. It happened near remote Healy, Alaska, more than 200 miles north of Anchorage. And officials say soldiers based at Fort Wainwright from the 11th Airborne Division were flying 2 AH-64 Apache helicopters. They were flying them back from a training mission when the crash happened. A spokesperson confirming to NBC News there were 2 on board each helicopter. Tragically, 2 soldiers were declared dead at the scene. A 3rd died on the way to the hospital, and the 4th is being treated for injuries sustained in the crash.
And there's new evidence against the young airman suspected of orchestrating that massive leak of U.S. intelligence secrets. Now, prosecutors are using that information to try and keep him behind bars. NBC News Chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander has more.
Former Massachusetts Air National Guardsman Jack Teixeira's fate is in the hands of a judge, with federal prosecutors urging the court keep him behind bars until trial, saying he's a flight risk and may still have classified material that could have tremendous value to hostile nation states. The judge opting to consider arguments and issue a ruling later. In their new filing on Teixeira, who's charged with leaking highly classified military documents online, prosecutors allege the 21-year-old took steps to conceal his actions. Authorities finding a tablet, a laptop, and an Xbox gaming console smashed in a dumpster at Teixeira's home. Prosecutors allege he has a troubling history of making racist and violent comments on social media. Last November writing, "If I had my way, I'd kill an expletive ton of people." In Teixeira's bedrooms, prosecutors say they found an arsenal of weapons, including handguns, rifles, an AK-style high-capacity weapon, and a gas mask. Teixeira is accused of leaking damaging information about China, the war in Ukraine, as well as documents that reveal how the U.S. is gathering intelligence on its allies. The U.S. is under pressure to determine why an airman in tech support had access to some of the nation's top secrets.
The sad reality is that it seems like our Department of Defense has less of a rigorous insider threat and vetting process program in place than even corporate America does.
Teixeira has not yet entered a plea, his lawyer calling him a 21-year-old kid who lives in his hometown and would stay with his father if released. For its part, the Air Force has now suspended 2 commanders from Teixeira's intelligence unit pending an investigation. Back to you.
Peter, thank you so much.
All right, everybody, let's get a look now at your weather this morning and major flooding across the country here. Storms leaving behind some significant damage in Wisconsin and even a community in Minnesota that's on your screen now. The impact really seeing no bounds here. Communities are bracing as more rain is expected this weekend.
Yeah, so let's dig in and bring in meteorologist Angie Lassman for more. Angie, good morning.
Good morning, ladies. We still have those flood warnings up and down the Mississippi River. You can see they extend from Minneapolis just to the north of St. Louis. This is something that we'll deal with through even the beginning part of the early of our next work week. We see the minor, even major flood stages happening up and down that river, thanks to that snowmelt that's occurring for parts of the Midwest and continuing to cause some problems that you just saw in the video. Meanwhile, out west, we have a similar situation with all the snow that fell in parts of the Sierras and in that same kind of region, with these temperatures headed to the triple digits in a lot of spots. We're talking 106 by the time we get through the afternoon hours in Palm Springs today, low 90s for Sacramento, 95 for Las Vegas tomorrow. So the warmth will continue out west, and that means the snowmelt continues. We have the flood watches stretching from California into Nevada and into parts of Idaho. With that excessive runoff, streams, rivers, you'll likely see some flooding if you live in that area. Meanwhile, rain on the way for a lot of folks on the East Coast. We have the severe weather that we're still tracking with one of these systems working in, but we also have the heavy rain that's worked through parts of the mid-Atlantic already this morning and continues to trek into the Northeast. Now, there's going to be multiple rounds of this, and I'll show you what I mean. There's the first system that's going to push that rain in, and it has already left us with a soaking kind of Friday morning commute. And then we have this secondary system that's going to push out of the plains, eventually bringing the potential for the strong to severe storms into parts of Texas today, and then bring more rain and even some snow for parts of the Midwest. The Northeast will start to wrap up some of this rain by the time we get into Saturday evening, but that's not all the rain that we'll get for the weekend, right? We have this secondary push of moisture that works in just in time for your Sunday plans as well. Moral of the story is you might want to have some indoor plans for your Saturday and Sunday if you live in the Northeast or the Mid-Atlantic. Meanwhile, here's the risk for severe weather today. Dallas, Waco, Austin, San Antonio, all in the greatest risk area for some of those stronger storms. We will once again have the potential to see that large hail, the wind gusts up to 75 miles per hour, and it does include the potential for a couple tornadoes. So another day where you want to stay connected. The hail could be up to tennis ball size, so really significant and can definitely cause some damage if you're going to be out and about during the afternoon and evening hours, something to pay attention to. Meanwhile, heading into tomorrow as that system works to the east, the Panhandle and the Big Bend area is going to be involved in the potential for some of these stronger storms. Tornadoes, not quite as likely, but still some larger hail for the state of Florida and into Georgia. We'll watch for that as well as the gusty winds. Rainfall amounts, well, they're going to be impressive. We'll see anywhere from 2 to 3 inches in some spots, guys. We could see some localized flooding in some areas, so it'll be a weekend for an umbrella or maybe just Netflix.
I was going to say, maybe just stay inside.
Yeah.
All right.
Good book.
Angie Lassman, thank you.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is hitting back at Disney while on an overseas trip to Jerusalem. DeSantis argues the company is getting special treatment that needs to end. NBC News national correspondent Gabe Gutierrez has the latest.
Thank you so much.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on the world stage touting his pro-business record, but also firing back after Disney's lawsuit, which alleges he orchestrated a campaign of government retaliation by pushing to scrap Disney's decades-old deal with Florida that allowed the company to govern itself.
The main employer in your state now is coming back and saying that you are anti-business in this new lawsuit. What's your response to that?
The idea that somehow being pro-business means giving companies their own governments, that is not what a free market is all about. They're upset because they're actually having to live by the same rules as everybody else.
He calls the suit political, but Disney calls his actions payback for the company's opposition to Florida's law that bans classroom instruction of sexual orientation and gender identity. The culture battle comes as 4 GOP operatives now tell NBC News DeSantis could enter the presidential race by mid-May.
There's not been any decisions made.
This global trade mission widely seen as a way to bolster his foreign policy credentials.
Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons creates a risk.
He met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
What'd you talk about?
Talked about Iran, talked about Israel-U.S. relations. He's a friend of Israel.
The Prime Minister sitting down with NBC News, declining to pick sides in the U.S. presidential race, but speaking warmly about DeSantis, as well as his potential rival.
President Trump has been a great friend of the state of Israel as well, and he did great things for the state of Israel, like recognizing Jerusalem as Israel's capital.
Our latest NBC News poll shows DeSantis trailing former President Trump by 15 points in a potential primary matchup. The governor is expected to round out his foreign trade mission in the United Kingdom on Friday. Back to you.
Gabe, thank you.
Meanwhile, former President Trump, who could potentially face DeSantis for the GOP nomination, was campaigning in New Hampshire yesterday. This was his first major campaign event since President Biden announced earlier this week he was running for re-election, and Trump did not hold back in his remarks on the incumbent. NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard is in Manchester, New Hampshire for us. Vaughn, good morning. So New Hampshire, of course, is a critical state for Republicans running for their party's nomination. No surprise then that Trump was there, and also no surprise that he took aim at Biden. What exactly did he say?
No, and this is his first campaign event, of course, since Joe Biden's re-election announcement. And while he continually pointed to the primary polls to this crowd that show him significantly ahead of any potential other Republican rivals, including Ron DeSantis, he tried to frame this as a general election 2020 rematch against Joe Biden. Take a little listen to what he said last night in New Hampshire.
There's never been anyone in the history of American politics so crooked or dishonest as Joe Biden. The choice in this election is now between strength and weakness, between success or failure, between safety or anarchy, between peace or conflict, and prosperity or catastrophe. We are living in a catastrophe. With your vote on November 5th, 2024, we're going to crush Joe Biden.
In this, for Donald Trump, of course, is New Hampshire, a state that he lost in 2016 and 2020 to Joe Biden. But it's also that all-important second primary state in the Republican primary. So while we are heading into the summer months of campaign season, this for Donald Trump was him trying to set the stage and the pressure on other Republican lawmakers here and making the case to the voters to stick with him and remain loyal for a third time, Sinclair.
Yeah, and Vaughn, I mean, when it comes to setting this stage, it strikes me that the New Hampshire GOP primary will take place next February, and we have recent polling. It shows that Trump is well ahead of potential contenders for president. What exactly are voters there where you are, New Hampshire, saying about Trump running again?
Each of the individuals I talked to consistently said that they felt like the Trump years of the administration were good years for them, and that they feel like they should have the loyalty to turn to him again because he's determined to give this a third go. Take a listen to a few of the folks who we talked to. Had you guys considered anybody besides Trump in the Republican race?
Nope. Trump's my man.
No. Doesn't matter who's going to
Trump
run
100%.
Does not matter who's going to run against him. Because he's already been there. He knows who the swamp creatures are. He knows who his enemies are. He knew he did it once. He's going to go in there and he's going to do it again.
Donald Trump, not only from conversations but polling, has built a solid base of support. It's going to be hard for other Republicans to chip away at that here. But for Donald Trump, of course, it's making the bigger sales pitch that he could also win in the general election. And he's going to have to make that case to Republican voters to lock this down here in the months ahead, Sinclair.
Yeah, time will tell on that one. And Vaughn, I do want to turn and talk about a moment that happened yesterday at a diner where Trump actually hugged a woman who was convicted in connection with the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that moment and exactly what he said to her?
Right, it's notable because Donald Trump has remained sympathetic to those January 6 defendants, including those who have served jail time. He has suggested potentially giving them full pardons if he were to get back into the White House. This particular woman was inside of that diner that he walked into, signed her backpack, called her a, quote, terrific woman. To note, I actually had a long conversation with this woman at a rally last year. She is part of an extreme right movement known as Negative 48. It's a wing of the QAnon movement. She is somebody who has called for the execution of members of Congress over the certification of Joe Biden into the White House. She has a litany of conspiracy theories in which she promotes. She is somebody who served about 180 days in prison for refusing to leave the Capitol grounds there on January 6th, the day of the insurrection. But for Donald Trump, this is part of his effort to really try to make these individuals sympathetic. He continued yesterday to call the 2020 election rigged. Of course, that is not the case. But for Donald Trump, he is trying to make the case as to why voters should give him another attempt. And part of that is by suggesting that the last election was unfairly taken from him.
All right. Important analysis. Vaughn, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.